I'm so happy to be here with you, Jonathan, and I'm so happy to be here with the PulveREDU. It's a big opportunity for all of us to join together and to do something special. I'm happy to explain what we did in the previous class because it's really important to go back and make sure that we're internalizing what we're talking about. So for me, it's really to go back is to go forward. Just to give an intro, like I did in the previous one, that United Souls is a concept and a brand which I think will bring a lot of inspiration to the world right now, where there's so much divisiveness, and especially like where I live. Maybe I'll give a few examples, but there's been some pretty intense stories just within the week that, since, or 2 weeks since we last did the first part of the course. So that it's definitely a very urgent topic. It's not just a topic which people should just, maybe it's important, down the road I'll get to it. And, it's something which people can, think about. No, we're talking about real life. Like people are dying. Like it's a matter of life or death. And obviously we have to live life in a more joyful, happy way. We can't let life get too heavy or overwhelming. Like during this last year and a half with Corona challenge, everyone had their challenges and not let life get too overwhelming or be overburdened. But right now, currently, politically and economically, and just in terms of the general climate, there's a lot of opportunities for us to work on our ability to unify. And that's the focus of the course. The course is to bring concepts of unity, the fact that we have a soul level that people are either aware of or not aware of and need to become more aware of. It's not really, in my opinion, it's not really optional. There's just certain things that are absolutes. And for the sake of humanity, if we understand that truth that we have a soul, by the fact that we go to sleep every day, by the fact that after 70 or 120 years, however long you live in this world, our soul goes somewhere. It's not just an atheist mindset of it just turns black or something, or the screen goes off. There is another world that we're tapping into and that we're part of, and it's really important to be aware of that level of our soul is not just for the next world, but it's for now. It's for us to live in daily life and to realize it can impact our daily life in a real way. And that's why I'm feel very motivated to do this, because I do feel there's a lack of content on unity online and in the global conversation and narrative. And there's also a lack of awareness of the soul. And that could be even someone who knows they have a soul. Like a lot of the people in our Zula are very spiritual people, and in our communities at large are quite spiritually minded, and they have an awareness, but there's always different levels. There's understandings of deeper and deeper parts. And for me, in this course, since this is generally a 10-part course, we're going to try to keep it very practical, because we don't want it to just be a spiritual journey. We want it to be a daily journey for our life. So that's my hope, that whoever joins me on these classes will grow in a daily reality, or that you can live more unified, that you can be more soulful, that you can connect to people in a more deeper way and really understand yourself in a deeper way and enjoy life, that knowing that there is going to be the optimism of the soul, that there is going to be unity and there is going to be a unified experience, and it doesn't have to feel so disparate and painful, etc. So this is the main concept of what we're doing here. And just to go over the concepts of last class without getting too bogged down in it, but just to touch on it, we started off that in order to access the soul level, we're going to have to become more proactive and less reactive, which once again, anyone's welcome to jump in and speak and be interactive. That's the whole point of this course. But if you feel like that something is not clear, or you have something a better example, or you want to be proactive in how you react to the class, because being proactive is always the option that I personally am aiming to guide people towards. And I think it's become a very popular concept in thought leaders nowadays, and especially with a lot of the online gurus and people guiding people in all the different podcasts, and because it's what I mean. For example, with the recovery world, the concept is taking ownership of yourself, and to have that ownership, to be responsible for yourself, and not to fall into the narrative, which is very strong now, of victimhood and blaming people, is actually going to make a massive difference in how we approach everything. I mean, if we would go political, it would affect how we do policy making, because instead of making people into victims, we rather build them and give them the power themselves to take life into their own hands on a certain level. Obviously, with guidance, but there has to be that empowerment, and that's something which being proactive gives yourself and gives other people around you. Another point is that we have to tap into that part of our soul that will give us strength to understand that we have the powers to do what we need to do. That we often put limits on ourselves, like we say that we're not able to do certain things and accomplish certain things. We put those limits ourselves. It's you could call it a self-fulfilling prophecy, or people call it a narrative in your mind or way of thinking, that you're doing things with certain scripts and people are putting those scripts onto you also, and that's limiting your ability to achieve. And so when you have an understanding, you have a soul. That soul's not limited. That soul's unlimited. It's an infinite force, and the soul could be called Jonathan, the soul could be called Lauren, the soul could be called Eli. It has a name on some level, because what we'll get into in the next part that we covered last week was the idea of having a mission. So one of the ways of understanding a mission is to give a title, to give a name to it. It's not limiting. It's just giving a description so you can relate to it. Like you have a relationship with people in your life, you have names, and everyone knows the importance of names, but it gives a certain definition. So if I would tell you, Jonathan, for example, since you're here, your name means to be a giver. Jonathan in the Hebrew language, which is a language I'm going to just use in this example because it will give us an insight into your name. Oh, yes, origin from the Hebrew, meaning yes. You're already ahead of my game. It's amazing. So that's the idea of being a giver, and that God gave you the power to give. And if you would know the stories from the Bible, and I'm not someone to start bringing religion so much to what we're doing, but just as an insight to your name, since that was the first famous Jonathan in the world of history, that his name was Jonathan. And Jonathan, he was the son of Saul, and he was the second to be king, and yet he put his needs behind and put the needs of someone else ahead of it. That was a proactive choice. He wasn't reactive to his potential competition, which at that time was David the king, or David HaMelech, as we say in Hebrew. He put his own needs on the side and understood that God had given him a bigger mission, a bigger purpose, that he was there to now help David the king do his mission in the world. And that was his mission, to empower David to do his mission. And that's the idea, that God gave him the ability to see that. So he lived up to completely his mission in the world and his name, because he handed over the kingship to David the king. And that was his purpose. Shaul, interestingly, means to borrow. He was actually borrowing the kingship, but he couldn't accept that. So he was fighting with David. So he wasn't really fulfilling that part of his mission, which was to hand it over. But his son did fulfill it and handed it over to David the king. And that became the kingship for all the generations, even till now. In our heritage, that's what we believe. But the point is, for you, as your name's Jonathan, to understand that you've been given a lot of gifts and you have a power to help other people tap into those gifts. That's just an example of one name. And a person can go into many names and understand a lot of deep understandings. And I would use some of the more ancient mystical texts to understand those things, because it's like a treasure trove that people are choosing to ignore for whatever reason, or maybe they're not choosing, maybe they just denied it. Like I grew up, honestly, no access almost to any of my own tradition, and I didn't know about any of these concepts. So I could have become a victim, and it was hard for me initially, because I had to catch up so much on my own heritage and my own ancient wisdom that was never really taught in front of me in a deep way or profound way or in a meaningful way. It just seemed very irrelevant. Like, as people say nowadays, fairy tales or whatever. But once I realized, thank God, when I was around 18, 19, I had a certain, lifestyle change. I came to Israel and I chose to delve into my heritage and delve into my own treasure trove of wisdom that's in my own backyard, not having to go to some other place like in India or some other place to check into other religions, because I did do a lot of research sitting in university before that into other religions. I was like, no, I'm going to look into my own thing and see what it's about. And that gave me ability to be proactive in my religion, like my own spirituality, as an example, rather than blaming people around me. Why didn't I learn? Why wasn't I given that education? I went and educated myself, and it wasn't an easy choice. It was hard. People were against me doing it. A lot of family, they even sent me to psychologists and rabbis and all kinds of people to talk me out of it. And it was a difficult choice, but I was proactive. I kept pushing and made my way to Israel, made my way to Jerusalem, found a way to support myself and eventually my wife. And it's been a struggle. And bit by bit, people have started to understand from my own background that there is something to what I've done, even if they haven't chosen to follow me. But they've seen that there's been a lot of goodness and positivity generated from that initial challenging time period. And that's often something which, everyone's going to have to go on their own spiritual journey to figure out where their light of their soul is. But the point is that the name is a very big indicator. And that would be just one example of being proactive, of living your mission, which is the second point we discussed, is to tune into your soul message, your soul lesson. And I feel like, me personally, is even till now, and you think after, say, 20 something years, you're involved, say, in a certain lifestyle, it would get a bit repetitive or boring. But no, what happens is, if you open up your heart to the flow that's entering this world constantly, which is, as we've explained, is a soul experience, that flow is constantly impacting on our choices and how we live. And there's often a very profound flow that really indicates what our mission is, what our purpose is, what is the message of each day. And that in itself can help us, because then we're living in a more uplifted mindset. We're not so caught up in what does the news say, what's the new social media trend. We're living on a more internal level, that we're actually looking at from the soul. The wisdom within is guiding us much more than you would allow the external messages to guide us. And to understand, once you're doing that, then the things around you start to click in. Now, even the messages outside of you start to make sense. Even if someone phones you or messages you, or we're doing this course today, it starts to have a flow. And that, for example, for me, was a very powerful way of becoming more proactive, because I wasn't reacting to my life. I was taking life into my own hands on a certain level and deciding to be more soul focused, to be more caring, all the different attributes of the soul that we'll get into. The idea of having a mission, it gave me a different focus in life. And once that was the last week's class, we've done that private victory of really working on our internal world, that we're more in touch of who we are, then we can start taking it out public. Because to really impact other people on an effective way, we can't do that unless we're more grounded in ourselves and who we are. Now, say, for example, there's a lot of people out there who become famous and they haven't done this work. Well, you can just look into what's going on out there in terms of the young superstars and how hard their life has been, and having fame so young without grounding themselves and getting in touch with themselves, and then what takes place after that. And unfortunately, we're in a culture that's encouraging, people to want to be famous. Like, if you ask a young kid nowadays, I've heard that, Lauren can help me with this, but they don't necessarily want to be like firefighters, which is a very altruistic, amazing thing, or police officers, sorry for that delay. That was someone trying to call me, and I've told that person not to call me now, but they did it anyway. So you have the idea, I'm not going to be reactive. That's the whole thing. So the concept of being able to ground yourself in your lifestyle, that you are in touch with your inner essence, is a whole different path. And people don't know. People, like in school system, for example, aren't taught that path. They're not taught that they can meditate. Generally, there's no meditation instruction or spiritual instruction in school, or understanding that the victim mindset is not a good way to go. That, it's a different challenge in the school system, what's going on, without getting too heavily into it. But the main point is, if you ask a kid, what would you like to be? I'm sure it would be, I want to be a YouTuber, I want to be a TikTok celebrity, I want to be like, whatever the vogue and the trend is. And that's unfortunately something which, if you have children, if you even the inner child within yourself, you have to discuss that. You have to work that out. Like, what is it I want to be? That's the mission statement. That's the values, the goals, the dreams. We have to really want something that's a bit more meaningful than those things we just mentioned. Now, if you're going to become a YouTuber and you're very influential in a positive way, amazing. I've got no issues with all those things. There are people on TikTok, I'm sure they can accomplish amazing things as well. But the point is, it's in essence, they're seeking out fame. And that's the opposite of what we're trying to do here, because first things first, you have to get in touch with the soul level to be able to then be effective, to be an effective influencer, to be able to help people with their life. You have to first know your own life. And that's something which takes a lot of learning and research and development. And I feel like, thank God, I'm 41 now. So I feel like after 20 years or more living in this holy city in Yerushalayim, in Jerusalem, and being gone through so many intifadas and going through so much, building my own family and being connected to wonderful people like Jeff and Lauren and all these amazing people I've had the merit to meet here, living in Jerusalem physically, meeting them here in Tel Aviv, or going back to London where I'm originally from, my first 20 years of my life, and reconnecting to my past there. I feel like I've had the opportunity just personally to really learn a lot and develop a lot and be guided a lot. And therefore I feel in the right place only now at 41, ready to now start teaching outwards really my message and what my brand of United Souls. I only feel ready now. And it really, honestly, that would be my flow, that it only came together now. So I'm just saying this as an example for me, my personal example, that you might say, well, wait a minute, I'm a bit older now, like I'm in my midlife or whatever. No, this is the best time now, because you've really accumulated a lot of life experiences. You've got a lot of wisdom. This is the time. And a lot of people, God forbid, they sort of like, feel, well, I'm not like a young guy anymore. I can't compete with the new generation. You totally can. Because if you look at the economic reality, what's going to be valuable, and this is based on big thought leaders nowadays, it's going to be being versatile and having emotional intelligence. And building that emotional bank account, building that emotional intelligence is not dependent on how good looking or anything external or youth or anything like that. It's going to be based on inner content. And that's what we're doing here. That's what we're going to discuss. Everything here is inner content. It's nothing superficial. And that's one of the good things about our communities. We stay away from politics, because politics often, the problem with politics is generally it's superficial. It's or dogma. It's not something that's actually coming from real content, from real action, from real life. And that's why it's a healthier place to be, these kind of platforms, than a lot of others out there right now. And I believe that if we develop the unity concepts in a very clear way, and we do it as a group, because I can't do it by myself, that's my next point. I can't do the public victory by myself. I need to join with others to do that next level. And that's what we're going to discuss coming up. That's going to be the focus of this class. How do I get my life effectively focused, that I can then go public with my mission? So that's where we're holding at now. That's today's class. I hope the first 2 points were clear. If you have any questions, please ask throughout. But right now would be a good time as well. What were the first 2 points? Just to summarize: being proactive and mission statement, having a mission, having a goal, having clarity. And that's a lot to do with being in touch with your inner soul level. So that would be the beginning of the class and the previous class. So now we're going to go ahead to the next third point.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So my history before this, or my job before this was I was an early childhood teacher. So I worked with kids, mostly 3s and 4s, and then I taught in our after-school Hebrew school. So I taught the gamut of people, up until adults and families. The emotional intelligence that you're talking about, like I see it forming when the kids are little. And even in a 3-year-old classroom, we were battling against the victimhood. And it's so sad that that's what they took in from their world so far. Role of,
Yeah.
woe is me, I can't do anything, everybody hates me, or whatever it was. And, I always felt that was our power as their teachers. We were able to really take their little universe in our classroom, and we were able to create a safe place. It went as far as, like rewriting superhero stories and rewriting all kinds of things because they needed powers. They needed to know that they were powerful and that they weren't the victim. And it was a Jewish school, Jonathan, so there's a lot of Hebrew that we would use in there, but we would walk around saying, my superpower is chokhmah, is wisdom. I know how to pick up a rock and break it apart and see what's inside. That was my wisdom. And the other one would say, I have derech eretz. I know how to relate to other people. I know kindness. And I think that, look, we started this generation of children. I was teaching for like 22 years. So like they've had this growings in them, but it gets lost somewhere. It's almost like when they go to public school or they go to private school or they just go to school, there are so many other influences because there's not enough of it at home.
Yeah, so these are all real points, Lauren, and I think that the education story of how to bridge what we're doing here to the next generations that are coming up now in this technological, immersion that they're having is going to be a massive, challenge for all of us as parents or educators, and I think it's definitely something we should discuss more. But once again, if I feel that I'm giving over to my children that inner relationship, that they are able to connect themselves also to their soul level, then I feel like I've accomplished a lot. So then whatever they go through, they themselves are now holding themselves accountable rather than blaming on the parents or the teachers.
Right.
And that's an amazing accomplishment. So choosing superheroes, like as an example, like they even say Wonder Woman, she's a very pretty woman, so that sort of distracts the man a little bit. But if we would look past that and say the message behind it is that a woman can be empowered and have power and doesn't have to become like defeminize herself, but she can be totally a woman, like a Wonder Woman. She's not losing her woman qualities, like she's only enhancing them, and becoming more powerful and defined and strong and not being taken advantage of. So there's a lot of good lessons we can learn from that can help a young girl realize she can also be a Wonder Woman in her own way. And you just do the same thing. Like I don't know if Superman's popular anymore, but I'm hearing that Marvel, unfortunately, and all the different demographics of that is now being wokeized, or whatever you want to call it, without getting political, but it's being moved into the hands of agendas rather than what I grew up with was like legit superheroes. Like it's that's being looked down upon, unfortunately. So there's been a lot of changes in that respect, that things that we took for granted growing up are now going through a lot of change. But the positive side of that is that change can lead to clarification, that if the new generation is once again connected to that soul level in a sincere way, like you are a role model for that, and they start to develop it themselves, then they will start to make their own clarifications of all these systems and media powers out there. We shouldn't underestimate, that's what I'm saying, the power of the soul and all the seeds you planted. Every seed that Lauren or any other educator plants in a child, it will bloom. It will get through all the weeds. It will get through all the distortion. It will bloom. I've seen it as a teacher of teenagers at risk and young adults. I've seen that those someone in their past planted the seed. Someone like Lauren planted those pure seeds into their grandparents. Somebody somewhere planted some good seeds into these people, or themselves awakened the soul level, and they came alive, and they suddenly became amazing people. And they not only that, they used all that last however many years of pain and addiction to whatever they were busy with. They used it now to help others who are struggling. And that's an amazing thing, that the soul level often has to be immersed in the darkness on some level but then once it's gone through that pain and darkness, it will take those lessons out from there. It will take out certain deep messages and deep realities and deep empathy and deep pain from those experiences, and will then have that knowledge to help others. So it's often the people that have gone through the challenges and the struggles that we're going to see this new generation go through on a level we can't even imagine. They're going to actually come out with tremendous tools to now help all the people suffering and stuck and limited. But it's once again, it's dependent on them being aware that they have an unlimited power that will give them that strength to overcome their limitations. That they are superheroes and they have that power. And I believe in that 100%. So that's part of what this course is about, is getting people to be proactive and to believe in their mission, that they have amazing powers to do what they need to do in this world. That will lead us to this point that the class is on today, which is living effectively and being focused and knowing how to use our time in a way that's priority. And everyone has a challenge with this, especially now, because technology, as we learned from The Social Dilemma, has documentary on Netflix, has been built to take away your time, to completely manipulate your time. That's what the media giants, the tech giants are doing. So we have to really understand how valuable time is, how time is a gift, that we're only given a certain amount of moments in this world to accomplish. Every moment of life is an opportunity. And we have to remind ourselves our priorities, which is very much to do with the previous point of the mission statement, our goals, our dreams. If we're clear about that, if we're clear about what we're here for, then we'll prioritize correctly what we're supposed to do with time. That's the idea of first things first, as Stephen Covey so cleverly put it, to really know what your priorities are. And I know myself, for example, during the daytime, I try not to watch just whatever on the media. I try not to binge anything. The daytime is there for work, for family, for only at the end of the day will I give myself that luxury. And hopefully, if I'm disciplined enough, I will use that end of day to do other things that are personal, like write my book or edit my book. I've been a bit lax this week, I have to admit. So we all have our ups and downs with this challenge, but we have to remind ourselves, and that's one of the good things about doing this course, is it gives us a time to stop and remind ourselves what our priorities are. So I'm going to tonight, now, when I get back after a busy day, I'm not just going to go and just watch whatever. And even if I am watching whatever, I'm going to have my phone with my document open with the airplane mode on so no one can phone me. And I'm going to edit my book. And if someone wants something from me, I'm not available in that moment. This is my book editing time. And I might have some background noise or whatever, but this is so whatever it is that you're prioritizing, whatever your mission is, you got to be all in. Like there's no claim on our time and on our life and our choices. And that's why I mentioned here in my course that we have to be obviously real with ourselves. Yeah, you have to truly know what is good for you, because if you're not real with yourself, you can go a bit crazy on this point. Like people make time management classes and they go really full on in very rigid ways of what's priority, and then they're not real anymore, and they can actually undo what their real priorities are. For example, people get really obsessed with the work and then they ignore the family, or people get really obsessed with a certain project and then they ignore the work. And the work is their actual obligation. They're legally contracted to do a job for this company, and you can't just say, no, I don't, I got something more important. Like for me, my job, I have a paid job, thank God. And my job is to bring, thank God, I'm very blessed. One of the main things is to put out a lot of content of soul, of Emuna, it's called in Hebrew, to put out a belief that we have a soul. That's really my job. I mean, what a blessing that someone's willing to pay me to do that. Yeah. And, obviously they have their agendas in their company of what they want to do and accomplish. And I help them with that without, complaint. But the point is that the essence of my work and my boss and who I do my weekly class with, it's called Emuna class. It's a whole class just helping people have more Emuna, faith, universal awareness of the soul. And we bring in all kinds of people. It doesn't matter what and who. And we bring them in and they have an experience of the soul through music and through talking about deep subjects. Right now, the main focus is on all the tragedies that have happened here. And we're trying to work out, like with many people, passing away for sad reasons and the current crisis with the Middle East challenge and everything going on, what can we do in a proactive way, again, being proactive, that fits within our mission statement? What can we do to overcome this hard time that we're all going through? So this holy man says that in his opinion, and I'm just sharing this just because it's an interesting way of looking at the current situation, he believes that it's by being devoted to loving people with full devotion, that completely dedicating your time to loving other people. That's what he believes will undo a lot of the pain and the problems of the current situation we're in. Now, I take that statement from my boss and I'm very happy because that fits everything my personal projects and mission statement is, which is unity, which is uniting souls. Okay, so he's saying in a practical way, devote your time to loving other people, which totally is the flow of what I'm trying to do. So I'm very happy that my boss is heading in a direction that totally fits my flow in my personal projects. So there's no contradiction. So everything I'm doing in the unity projects fits with my boss's projects because it's all one concept in the end. It's all one focus. And even what he wants us to do practically is developing more connection with humanity in a way that's love-filled. So that's just an example of thank God, of where once you start sinking into your priorities, like when I mean sinking, like not as S-I-N-K, but S-Y-N-C-H, like be really synergizing and joining into your priorities of what life's about. So then you'll start to see that everything around your life supports that. Even your job, even the Zula, like the Zula is totally a very unifying experience. We're there, as we spoke about last time we met 2 weeks ago. We spoke about the idea of unity in the Zula, that we shouldn't, and even Lauren mentioned it when she gave over the rules, the idea of unity, and it made me very happy that, and people even gave me some feedback that it helped them empower them what they need to do, their next step. This is giving them that push to go into what they need to do. It gave me a lot of encouragement. They mentioned it in the Zula. So I was very happy to see that the idea that the Zula is giving us a space that we can feel safe, and that there's some sort of guiding force from Lauren or Jeff that we should use that time in a prioritized way, that it shouldn't get sidetracked into politics or things that make people uncomfortable. And we come out the Zula ready for the next hour of our life, or the next half an hour, the next 30 minutes, or whatever it ends up becoming, what we're doing next. We've got what we needed from the Zula to go ahead. And I find the weekly Zula very helpful for my end of week, like chill, and so I can get to a more relaxed state of mind for the weekend. And I'm really appreciative that it's heading that way on a weekly level. So everything starts to flow in that right direction that you are tuned into, and that is taking the ideas, say, of Tim Ferriss and Stephen Covey and all these gurus out there about how to be more effective in time management. But the more important point is that you're not rigid about it. You're not stuck in it, that you can't open yourself to what's in front of you and what the flow is. So if a child needs attention right now, that's probably what you need to do right now. And even it could be like you see someone put up a video online once, and this guy's walking down the street and he's ignoring every single opportunity to do kindness and to help people. And it just creates this horrible reality of everything around him. He misses the baby carriage and someone has to go running after it and almost gets hit in the road. He misses everything because he's not paying any attention. He misses the old lady. She almost gets run over. Like, he misses everything. And then suddenly he wakes up to his reality, and he's able to now like do kindness, and the whole day flips around. The whole day is now him helping, and all those people have now better days. So his sphere of influence is elevated from that, and that's an amazing thing, that we have that power to elevate our life and bring ourselves to that point of clarity, that we are living our purpose, and time is only helping us. It's not preventing us, because we are flexible to tune into what the moment is asking of us. So, you know, I for example, I help book artists personally, yeah. And right now, my artist has a gig right this minute, yeah. He's meant to be there at a program, and he's meant to be creating a video feature, and it's going to be quite a lot of money. And that guy, the artist and the person hosting it, is phoning me during this Zula, yeah. And I told them both, please do not call me, because I knew. I'm experienced enough in the booking world that usually when you have a double booking, you're like, I'm doing my thing, so I'm not available, that there's something's going to come up that's going to want them to want to call me. And that's what's happened. And they're ignoring my request, both the artist and the client, not to call me, and they're calling me. Now, I've given them both the phone numbers to call each other and to arrange it directly. But often as a booking agent or a manager or whatever, when I've been involved in this business, people are not going to accept that you want to have your own time. They don't want to accept. They want to take over your time. Yeah. And they want to insist that you suddenly become part of their time. And it might not even be, one, monetarily worth it for you. Two, it might not suit you right now. Emotionally, you're not in the mood to deal with their choices, and like, you've created the booking set up, everything's good. All they have to do is turn up and do what they have to do. If there's an issue, phone each other. But they don't. They turn back to you. You get it sorted out. No, you this, you that. I'm sure it's happened to everyone here on some level, you know, on their business interaction. Suddenly you're being put in a position where you don't need to be in this position because you've done your due diligence. You don't need to do more than that. And you're not being paid to do more than that. You're not in that position. Now, this is where we get tested. This is where our time management and our focus on our first things first, our priorities, gets challenged. And part of my journey as working with artists is to educate them, and it's the same with whoever you're working with, is to educate them that I have my boundaries and to be clear about them. And they might be upset, and even if they move on and they're not interested in you anymore for whatever reason, but you're being real to your mission, and that will give you that ability to believe in your mission, and you won't get burnt, therefore, because you're not dependent on anybody. You're interdependent. And interdependent is a very deep thing. We'll get into it, but the idea of being dependent on people is a mistake. We mentioned it maybe a bit in the Zula, like with, you know, relationships with people. If we become dependent on people, that's not the right way to live our life. We have to be independent. And once we're independent, we have to realize that now we're independent. That's what we're saying by becoming more in control of our inner world, more in touch of our inner world. That's the one place we have control of. Then we can go and be interactive with other people and become interdependent. Then we're ready for the public victory of going out there and being successful in our business and whatever we're doing in a public way. We can then join with others. And that's why after we've done all this inner work, which we just mentioned 3 important points of being proactive, having a mission statement, and priorities, time management, time focus. That's the third one, living more effectively. Then we can go public. Then we can go out to the level of win-win and be interactive with others and start working on the public sphere, which is what we'll get into in the next few weeks, the next times we meet, how to be more effective publicly, because it's not going to work if your priorities aren't there. Yeah, it's not going to work if you haven't got a clear system. Like, even how you're going to run the Zula. How are we going to run the Zula if we don't have it clear, fine, it's a learning curve, that's for sure. We're all here to learn. But if we don't have it clear at some point, it's going to get challenged, and we're going to have to clarify it more. And the more clear it is, the more effective and successful it will be. And the same with every business. It's all about our awareness and clarity. And that's why when I began this, I mentioned the soul level, that by having a connection to the soul level, the soul itself communicates this kind of clarity. So you don't have to feel helpless. You don't have to feel like, where am I going to get this information from? I'm going to have to find some holy person, or I'm going to have to go read this book. This is an underestimation of ourselves. We have a lot of inner wisdom within. A lot to do, as I'm sure Lauren knows, with teaching children, is how surprised you are how intelligent children can be, because they have that inner wisdom within. And they have that inner purity, they have that inner clarity. And it's just a matter of just sort of nurturing it. You don't have to go change them so much. You don't have to go force them to be something they're not. It's about, yeah.
No, but you're right, Ellie, because it's about nurturing what they already have. Because as we grow up and we walk into this world and we feel insecure, we let go of all of it.
Yeah.
Like when a 3-year-old looks at you and says, I like your hair, but I liked it better the other way, they're not being mean.
Yeah.
They're telling you from the bottom of their toes what they feel.
So true.
Our reaction is,
they're being honest.
You might.
That is so true.
Look, I'm a heavy person, so children love to look at me and go, why are you so fat?
Oh.
I'm like, I like to eat. And I go, well, my mommy says, and then you hear all of this junk that they have in their brain about what food does to you and all this stuff. So there we are trying to unclutter it a little bit and go, look, people are people. This is what happens.
That's good.
We're good.
That's really profound, because I know even I've got some kids who are a little bit older who still have that that childish purity to how they speak, that they'll say things and it actually comes from a very pure level. Like the system doesn't get them, because it's not about but it's all about how much you remember and all this kind of stuff. It's not, they're not understanding there's a certain purity to this soul, that they just look at things on a very pure level, and it's very beautiful, so we can definitely work on that child inside of us for sure, now that we're adults, and that's often a lot of the inner work as well. But what I want to say is that, just to get back to the course, that I believe very strongly in this next level, the win-win one, is where a lot of people in business and life are going wrong. That they think that it's the competition out there is that I win. And what I've learned is it's all about collaboration. It's all about working with others. And being real with where people are at to work with. Like I'm often making assessments or testing where I work. As blessed as I am to have the job I have, but the infrastructure where I work, there's a lot of problems. A lot of problems with the personalities, the culture that Israel has produced. I'm not saying always, in all ways, but a lot of the Israeli culture, they've grown up in a war-torn country, and it's been a very big struggle to live here. So they've come out with a certain competitiveness that for me is not healthy, and I've had to learn how to make my boundaries with them, and to learn how to get the best out of them without getting into that, and just getting them through compliments, through being very clear in my instructions, because I'm a director of a program, to get them to do what I need them to do without it becoming a conflict, without it becoming a weekly struggle. That rather they get the point of what they need to do without me having to be confrontational. And it's just about keeping focused on the collaboration of what we're doing together and what we can accomplish together, rather than what they're not doing and what they don't know. And it's given me a lot of win-win results, that I'm consistently producing results in my company, even when it looks really not good, like the website's busted and not working, and serious stuff's going on within the infrastructure, and employees have left, and you're starting to think, oh my God, how am I going to put out a week of content, when a lot of it's crap or not working? And excuse my language, but that's when you collaborate. You bring out the best from the people around you. Suddenly other people from outside suddenly collaborate because you've got good relationships with a lot of people that you've collaborated with before. You've already done a lot of good things for people without pay, just to help people in the past, and suddenly now they're there just in time to help you in that time frame. There's a lot of win-win opportunities in work, and it fits my mission statement, which I already told you is United Souls, is to unify with people, but it works in a practical level on business, and even more so relationships, like with your family. Everyone's different. People are not going to do what you want. If you're married or you're not married, they're not going to do what you want, and trying to control people is a massive mistake. That's where this whole political structure's gone completely wrong. They're trying to control people through whatever means possible. That's not going to work, and it never has worked, never will work. People got to get that straight. And I know myself for relationships that I have to let people go on their journey of learning and choice. With my children, with my wife, they have to choose what they're going to do in marriage or what they're going to do as children. They have to come to that awareness. And that's a big lesson of the soul, that the soul is very patient, is very compassionate. The soul is very kind and very understanding, and is always looking at the long game, long term. That's a very important lesson you can learn from the soul, that the soul is eternal. So that the long picture is much more influential than the short term. And that in itself is very connected to time management. Effective time management is understanding the priorities are usually the long-term things. The priorities are usually the long-term relationships, the long-term business goals, the long-term educational goals, the long-term focus. And that would be the same with everything going on in the Zula. It has to have a long-term goal. And if you keep that in mind, then you won't get overwhelmed by the short-term, challenge. I mean, right now in Israel, for example, like Israel, there's a lot of short-term stuff going on. My wife went to give a present to her driving instructor. She just passed the driving test, and she's going to drive me to a wedding now. So that's a very big positive plus for us in this last week. But she went to go to the driving instructor because she didn't manage to give it to him before the test. And she went out of her way, decided she's not going to drive there because it's driving past an area which is a bit more dangerous, and she'd rather get on public transport. And on her way back, after making the driving instructor so happy, which is already being a kind person, using her time to do that kind of kindness, suddenly she sees someone running onto the tram, screaming and crying, and seeing someone being chased with someone holding a knife, being chased by police, and the gunshots. And so thank God the tram doors closed. Someone did come in who looked very suspicious, so my wife was very scared that she was with that person was with the person with the knife, without getting into who was who and what. But the point was, for this course, one, life is so precious, you never know what's going on. But two, my wife said afterwards that she felt that because she was doing something very kind and giving, there's no way that could have turned into a tragedy for her. That was something positive. And she just felt like she was on a flow, that even though she was aware of this nightmare situation going on around us, but she was confident enough in her mission and her flow that she's on the right path. That she was 2 minutes before where the stabbing happened, and then 2 minutes after away from it. Yeah? So she wasn't there at that moment. So fine, it was very traumatic. This just happened yesterday, and I had to give a class right afterwards, and I spoke about it there. But the point is that life is a gift, and there's going to be a lot of short-term stuff going on, like this kind of current crisis we're in here in Israel. But the long-term game is peace. The long-term game is to be able to live effective, happy lives together, to learn how to collaborate, to learn how to work with all kinds of people and all kinds of cultures and all kinds of different religions and missions. And that's the long-term game. And if we keep that in mind, no matter whatever we're going on, even if my initial reaction, like when the tragedy happened where 45 people were crushed, my initial reaction was the police. I'm angry with them. Or Yesterday, the police are heroes because they killed the guy with the knife, and I'm angry at those people that were wielding the knife. Yeah, my initial reaction is anger, like I'm a human being. We've got human realities. But my long-term reaction, my goal is to work on that anger and not to give into it, not to become it, and to go the long-term game of peace, of positivity, of finding a way to find unity. And that's my first reaction has been really to this whole thing. How have I been proactive? I'm asking people now for unity content. Give me content that represents unity in the world. Enough divisiveness online. Yeah, I see this person did that wrong, and I see that. All right, yeah, I get the point. Everyone's doing wrong. Okay, you're doing amazing at exposing everyone's wrongness. But what are you going to do about it to bridge gaps? So what are you going to do about it to bring the dialogue to a higher level? How are we going to learn how to communicate better? How are we going to learn how to get along? How are we going to learn to defuse this escalation in a way that actually has long-term results? And that is something which, I'm on that journey myself, and I have a responsibility. So I'm just bringing this as an example that the long-term goals influence how you react and how you post and how you present yourself publicly. It affects your ability to not just go be reactive and start posting online all these rants and ravings about this thing and that thing. No matter how justified you feel, all you're doing is being reactive rather than proactive. You're not looking into your long-term goals. You're not looking into your mission. You're not looking into the long game of what we're here for, the win-win. And that's generally what's going on out there, unfortunately, just to be honest. And that's where we can set a new trend. And that's where we can influence our sphere of influence positively. And I think if we can learn that today, we'll live in a much better world. And because if we can communicate it and apply it, the world will improve, and we won't be stuck in this painful situation long term. So I think that's a good example from real life that's going on outside my window, literally, that can help us in our life. I would say, like, in our personal relationships, same thing. The long term is peace. So there's no point posting a negative post about that person just because, I hope I've never done it. I hope I've never been politically negative or posted ever online. Of all the posts, thousands of posts I've done, I really hope I've never done it. If I've done it, please forgive me. I didn't mean it. It was a mistake. And that's the kind of mindset that we can make this world more unified, and the soul starts to influence. The soul starts to communicate more, and humanity starts to learn to communicate as souls rather than money-driven animals or whatever the alternatives are. I don't know, pleasure-seeking animals, whatever. There's nothing wrong with pleasure. I'm all into pleasure, and the soul wants pleasure. I just mean, when I mean pleasure, I mean pleasure that has a purpose, that has a part of our goals and long-term gain. So is there anything I want to say before we end off today? Because, I spoke a lot. Get a bit nervous when I speak a lot.
Thank you. That was awesome. And Lauren, I agree with you with kids. It starts at home. It starts with parenting, and like I have a 9.5-year-old son, and my goal is not to duplicate me. My goal is to empower him, right? And he's gonna make mistakes, and he does make mistakes, and it's really interesting coming from a divided home to see the difference between wanting him to be figured out, become his own soul, and his mother who just wants to love on him, but not in a healthy way. And she's just doing it because she doesn't know. But, what happened to dreaming? What happened to this, and I think you're right, Elliot, it's long-term versus short-term. So this all, like, Lauren, what I'm trying to do. There's so many components to it. It's not just, law enforcement or first responders. It's teachers. And are we supporting them and giving them the right knowledge and information? Because regardless or not, the systems, period, have failed.
Right.
They've all failed.
Yeah.
Not just policing,
not
just education. They've all failed. And that's the mission that Ellie, you're on, and I think we're all on.
Yeah, so I'm very much so. I have to say one thing, Jonathan, that I don't like to reinvent the wheel. Like, meaning if there's a system there, and I demonstrate that in my work example, then you have to figure out how to, even as broken as it is, because it is broken, even in my workplace is broken, but you work out how to get the best out of it, because there's still a system, and right now that is the system. And to go make my own website, that's going to, and my own infrastructure to support that whole story, that's going to be like, it's going to take away from my mission. So I'm going to have to slowly improve what's there and enhance what's there and empower what's there and build up from within the system. Like, I'm above the system, but I'm with helping from above to improve what's in the system. And so at least there's accomplishments and there's the long-term plan, and we're still together. That we're not becoming divided as society. Because often what happens when you say you want to break the system, the problem becomes that now someone might say, well, I'm the system. Like, I'm Mr. Smith from the Matrix, sorry to choose that example, but I'm the computer, I'm the system. And now that means you're at war with me. So now you've made an enemy instead of a friend. And then that's not collaborating necessarily the way. Because in the end, we are using big tech. We are using Facebook. We are using Twitter. As much as everyone's getting down on them right now, we're all using their resources. So they created something awesome. It's just going in a difficult direction for everybody. But it doesn't mean that we can't figure out how to get it back on course, or how to work with those people and communicate to those people. We don't want to become enemies of those people. That's what's bothered me a lot recently, that there's been a lot of good accomplishments from good people, but they've made somehow a lot of enemies. And when I watch that, I feel more pain than I feel happy, because even I don't want to be on the team. Like, someone asked me about the Middle East crisis. I have to choose sides. Which sides am I going to be on? Someone in London. I'm a podcaster and I got to choose sides. I'm going to bring different people. I'm going to choose. I said, who says you have to choose, man? Why can't you just work on, as life goes on, finding the middle path that communicates to both sides and improves both sides' situations, so that they can learn to, at least on some level, figure it out. Because in the end, they're a human and they're a human. And there must be some mutual place where there is some room to work together. Even if it's something small in the situation, but that small little seed can lead to tremendous good things. I don't believe in making a rosy picture. It has to come from small little steps and for the long-term goals. So too with your son. I don't know your situation, but it's going to be a long journey, and it's little steps. And even if there are people around who seem to be guiding not so right, like the education system or a parent or whatever, you and yourself are demonstrating that proactive, positive role model example as best you can. And that is all you can do. After that, it's their life, And I've got teenagers. Teenagers is like a whole nother level. The stuff they do.
Oh God.
I'm like,
It's okay. You aren't so easy either. Sorry to tell
yeah.
you.
But teenagers, it's like, oh my God, like, what they're doing. And like, so we've learned to like let go and only choose very specific things that we know we can accomplish to discuss and work on.
Exactly.
And it's all about being effective with choice and knowing the people you're talking to, where they're at, what they're able to do and what they're not able to do, and really just slowly working on it very gently and sensitively, and not trying to like come in and control and like take over the show like of their life. And I think that will lead to a long-term a good relationship with them, and a lot of mutual respect and love. And then once you've got that connection, then there's always ability to grow together and have happy life.
True. And Jonathan, I think one of the things too, especially with our own kids, is that my kids, I got divorced before my second one was born.
Yeah.
He left. I guess I was due in August, and he left July 1st. So Nora never really lived with her dad because he was already gone. There was a lot of animosity forever from me towards him, but the kids didn't get it from me. Like, we didn't have those negative interactions because my goal in life was not to badmouth him in front of them because it wasn't their issue, whatever issues it was between us.
The long term. Yeah.
The long term. So here they are, 25 and 30, and they don't have a great relationship with him. But it's not my fault.
No.
It's his.
Yeah.
It's what he put out towards them and how he didn't make them feel part of his family. And they tell me this as grown-ups, and I'm like, don't ask my opinion because you don't want to hear what I have to say, but I understand that it's hard for you.
Yeah.
Well, because now they're grown-ups. Now I can tell them what I can.
Yeah, the relationship, because you've got that relationship, you can have that conversation now. And I've seen that. My oldest daughter, who's just got married, and it's amazing how much she's now conversing with us, way more than when she was a teenager and not married, because she suddenly understood so much, and she's suddenly tuned in to us as parents on a whole different level as a married daughter. So it's really the long-term game that really proves the point. And it's so fulfilling when that happens. It's so like, oh wow, we really laid good foundations.
Oh my God. It's unreal. It really is. And I think that one of the things that's so hard, Jonathan, for you and for me, because we haven't seen what Ellie's seen in terms of making the little changes, is that when something that